Hi, it's Christy of So to Speak, and welcome to the Closet Series. Today, this conversation is for you if you are still on the fence of whether or not to start video conferencing with your team. If you're not really knowing, like, what's the point? Is it really that big of a difference? Hopefully, this conversation will give you an absolute screw it, just do it. Let's go on whatever platform you want for video, and realize that it really does make a huge difference in regards to creating or maintaining that sense of belonging and community and culture among your team and organization. And this conversation is also for you if you're someone who had this like feeling of wanting to talk about something pre-COVID, and now it's like this ignited fire. It's like, I'm so ready. I just don't, and maybe you start backpedaling. This conversation hopefully will just give you that fire. Absolutely go for it, whether it's on video or whether you're preparing to speak to small or large number of people after we're on the other side of all of this, and just allow you to check in about being very service oriented and how that is a huge way to get over feeling self-conscious when you're speaking. Kit Payne is our guest. He is the founder of BostonSpeaks, which is based in Boston. And he is a public speaking coach and trainer. He is just a super dynamic and incredible guy all around. He and I first met when we were 12 years ago. We were both teaching classes at a local upstate academy for kids, Arts Academy. Kit was teaching hip hop and dance, and I was teaching acting and writing classes. And we kept our relationship going strong, and here we are having a conversation about public speaking and communicating, and why is everybody making such a big deal about video? It's just video. So maybe if we don't make as much a big deal about it, more people will actually do it. So listen into the conversation about that. And my favorite part of the conversation is when Kit compares public speaking to cooking with love, and how important it is to be giving out from whatever you're saying from the same place as if you were giving someone a plate of cookies that you baked. It's a pretty awesome analogy. So without further ado, please sit back, relax, and enjoy our conversation.
Back to what I said earlier, embrace that this is a good chance to lead the new normal.
Mm-hmm.
Either you can be stuck and say, hey, I don't like it, and keep on saying that until this is over, or you can do something about it. Because if you are just saying, if you are saying, man, I'm so frustrated about this technology. Oh man, there's no human connection. Oh man, it's not the same. We're just saying the no's and the can'ts instead of trying to improve this.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, we are stuck in the situation. When we're stuck in the situation, it's hard to see. But it's how can we keep on improving on this side?
Absolutely. And improving in what I'm hearing too, which came to mind, was like realizing that you're not alone. Like when you're in the team, you guys are all improving together. So when you show up, like if you look at it like, I'm going to learn this video platform, whatever your team is choosing, for them. Not even really like, yes, it's a bonus for you because you're learning something new and it can be advantageous in many different ways, but also you're learning it for them to show up for them.
Yeah. And I think one of the best things that you can do on a meeting as a leader or participant is to throw in an exercise where you, Christy, or the audience listening, you can feel something and do something on the other side. For example, if I say, Christy, can you put your hands together like this and take a deep breath? Okay, even I don't care how silly the exercise is. The reason I'm bringing this up is it's not the breathing thing. It's not that. I was thinking again. Oh, no, it's good.
Oh, you just froze for a second.
So, I got it. Can you hear me now?
I can, yeah.
Okay. So before the COVID thing, they had to go meet people and sell shoes in person because, well, they had to feel the shoes. They have to feel the product. It's not the same when it's online. How can you, when I'm selling something, how can you, if you don't feel it, it's not the same thing anymore, right? That's kind of the piece that some people are missing when we're having meetings, is because in person, maybe we're able to bump into each other. Maybe it's just the feeling of when you're with someone,
Yes.
even though we're not touching, it's like you can still feel something.
Mhm.
So something to make everything more human is we need to do exercises that will make us literally feel something uh,
Mhm.
in meetings or in a presentation. I think this is one of the things that people can get better on. These virtual meetings, yeah, we're still talking, but if I said, "Hey, put your arm up," at least I'm like, "Oh yeah, I feel something." So
Yes.
therefore, it changes the tone of things.
Yes. So you're saying physically feeling it. So like that embodied feeling it.
I think that's the easiest way.
Yes. To transition in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, one thing too is I just did this with a team was I gave them the prompt before we met up, but I had them choose for the warm up, and it was kind of a train the trainer thing because they're the executive team and they're there to be like the captains right now, and it's like we all, especially the people who are considered the stereotypical leaders, we all need to be able to feel that we're being supported too. And so right now a lot of people who are in that classic leadership role in organizations or not even at home as parents and everything, it's like that, okay, I have to keep it all together and I'm the person that everybody's coming to. And so the point is like having the team come together. What I gave them as a prompt was for them to bring a picture of something that mattered to them,
Hmm.
or they had the option to come in and share. And it's an exercise called rose thorn root. So they come in with a rose, which is something that is a win or that's going well for them or that they're celebrating, that they're grateful for. A thorn is the challenge, something that they want to work through. And then I did ask them to, beyond the general challenge of COVID,
Hmm.
like within that specifically, what's a thorn for you? And then the root is something that they value, what's keeping them grounded. And just having that experience with each other creates people's sense of internal feeling, like that emotion of connection, that emotion of humanizing each other, learning something about your teammates that you may never have known, which creates that sense of camaraderie, even if it's from afar.
Yeah, I love the exercise. I might steal it in the future.
I want everybody. I mean, I want everybody to run with all of the exercises. You get the team together, everybody is probably very stressed to some degree. And if you go right into, so here's the agenda. Good morning, everybody. Here's the agenda. This is what we're going to do. This is what we need to work on. It's just going to keep it high. Whereas if you take the 5-10 minutes, it may sound counterintuitive because you only have this 45-minute time slot for everybody to get together, but it really is so worthwhile, and you allow people to really be in the space together.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know?
And as you're talking about this, Christy, I want to say that the medium has changed. Everyone's looking at a screen now, but the basic, even if this is in person or on video, is exactly the same. In person, you still want, when there's a good speaker or there's a good feeling in the room, everyone feels like they're in the room together. There's this magical feeling. But if the person in person is still off, you're still going to feel like, oh, I don't want to listen to that person. It's the same thing online. You know, it's when you have that team spirit, or maybe you're doing a presentation and the audience is connected, they will still be connected online. It's the same kind of flow. So everything that you just said, Christy, I hope that people will still continue to do that in person because it's the
Yes.
same effect.
Yes.
That nothing is changing. It's only the video camera and the technology, but everything else is still the same. There's a saying, I think I read this somewhere. In a good presentation or virtual meeting, you want to make it feel like everyone is in the same room with you, and that's
Yeah.
a feeling that people can have when they're all together. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's a feeling too of really looking at the person and forgetting that there's a screen. Like, yes, there might be some freezes that happen, and you can choose to be like, all right, this is just par for the course. We're figuring it out as we go. Or it can be like, see, I told you, this is ridiculous. Tech sucks. Like, they're freezing and I can't hear well. And whenever we're trying something new, we would tend to get very defensive. Like, the audio sucks. Like, this is just, I don't know what we're doing. We're just going to hang up. Like, no, you're being human by putting yourself out there, and there might be some kinks in it, but at the same time, if you can push through the kinks knowing that you're doing it as a team, it makes it so much maybe easier. That might not be the best word, but doable. It makes it more possible
Yeah. But
versus,
I do have to say, Christy,
yeah,
because, we think about this more than others, or we talk about it more than others. The people who are just doing the jobs, they have so many other problems to focus on. Why
yeah,
even focus on the screen and all that when we have so much fires to put out, or
yeah,
just, we're just like, okay, we don't even know what we're doing, adapting. I think many people that, of course, we talk about it. The other people are like, we're not even going to focus on this present side on the camera stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so, and to that point, what I'll say is, because I do agree with you to some degree, but I also feel like if people are willing to experience it through a facilitator or a trainer, like we do, that's what our expertise is. So it's our job to convince them about the power of 5 minutes, 1 minute breathing, 5 minutes of a warm up, 10 minutes of a conversation with a prompt, and how that internally shifts how you're feeling. So then when you go back out to put out the fire or go back out to talk to the direct report or your client, you're going to be doing it from such a more grounded and present place
Yeah.
versus feeling this frantic energy, because you can't fully feel the energy as much as you were saying before, like that positive feel that comes through a room. Like, no, it definitely is shifted when you're on the screen. It's the same thing as the energy that makes you not want to go in the room or not want to be near that person. So it's about how can you show up the way that you want. Like, I always go to, like, am I showing up the way that I would want to be hanging out with someone? Like, would I want to hang out with me right now? And if I say
I would want to
no,
hang out with you.
you
I do
would?
sometimes feel like, yeah, it's just speaking on camera now. We're just making it a bigger deal than it is.
Yeah. Because so many people aren't used to doing it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and when it becomes part of your job, and it's slightly optional, but when it becomes part of your job and you realize that it's something that you have to do, there's a little bit of resistance to it. And there needs to be that sense of, you know, what's the point? What's the purpose of it? I'm already stressed out. I already have all this other stuff to do. So I understand what I feel like what you're saying about presence is like, why is there such a big focus on that now? But when I hear presence, I think more of showing up in a way that is truthful, and it doesn't give people a hall pass to be a total jerk. Like, that's not what I'm saying. Like, you're feeling crummy and so you just show up. It's about like finding a way to check in a little bit first and be like, all right, I'm gonna go do an online team meeting and I'm feeling really awful. Like, what do
yeah,
I need to shift it a little bit so I can show up better for
yeah.
them and for myself? So it goes back to that awareness. So the presence, it's not like this razzmatazz jazz hand presence that I think a lot of people think of, like this dynamic presence. It's more of that being present. Like, when someone's being present and real with you, that's presence.
I want to say, like, I'm trying to shift it to, how, like, let's say when it's acting, or when they're playing an instrument or dancing. In the arts, or when we're practicing something, it feels like, oh yeah, we're actually practicing, and we're like nail, we're going to go into sessions and
Yes.
practice and practice and practice. I think that's the mindset people have. I wish that people would have that mindset when it comes to communication, but I don't think it's a norm to have that mindset, like practicing for an instrument. Oh, we got to sit down and practice 30 minutes with an instrument. For communication, it's not like that, but it should be like that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So how can people dip their toe in so that and why? Like, why is it so important that people do practice more?
That's how we get better. That, that's it. I mean, and I'm saying I feel like a fraud too, because I never did treat it that way. But as we're saying this, I do want to treat it that way. As you can see, like when I was in the dance studio, I would just work on, like the wave, the arm thing over and over and over and over and over. But when it came to communication, I'm like not. Yeah, I would memorize stuff when it's a presentation, but like some techniques stuff, I'm not like over and over and over and over. But it should be that way. It could even be that way when we're looking on camera now. Just look at the camera. Look at the camera. Don't look whatever it is. But I think it's that bigger mindset that's not there. But I think just talking about it will help people feel like, oh yeah, this is kind of like an art form that people should take into consideration.
Absolutely. And exactly. And like an art form, it's showing up and practicing it so that you get better. It's not like everybody's going to be a natural speaker. Even the speakers who you may love watching, if you go back into their history of how they became a speaker, chances are they may have had major stage fright. And they just practiced enough, and they got really clear on why they were speaking, what was their message, right? Like once you get really clear and understand what your message is. Simon Sinek, giving a shout out, he's been in the space of this for so long, right? This why. It's so clear and it's so true that if you can get really solid about why you're showing up and what your message is, your chances are, I don't want to say it will completely go away, but you won't be as self-conscious about it because your message is so much bigger than you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's going back to when you're saying your message, I think other people should start thinking about their audience more instead of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's good to think about ourselves. But what I am saying is maybe most of the clients that you might work with or I work with, they might be saying things of, how can I get more confidence? How can I be better with my voice? How can I get my message across?
Mm-hmm.
What I've noticed is that speakers who are at the top of the game, their questions will always go to, well, how can my audience get a more happier experience through my speech? So instead of what do I need to work on, how
Mm-hmm.
can our audience, the questions are always about the audience.
Yes. And so I just want to clarify, when I say message, what I mean is what fires you up, what gets you, and I don't mean fired up like where you get super excited. And if that's the case, great. But what's something that you get so passionate about that when you're talking about it, it is giving, like you're giving it to people. So I'm looking at it from the perspective that it absolutely is about your audience. Like your message is, it's for them. So knowing that you're giving something to someone, I don't want to say you forget yourself, but you're more likely to show up and do it because it's bigger than you. It's for other people. It's not just, how am I going to sound when I say my message? And is my message going to, like, you're going to do the practice work behind that. But I think the first step is really getting clear on why you're even.
So I'm interested, Christy. So how did you come to what you're doing now? What's your why behind what you do?
So what I'm doing with this series, or
No, not the series. When you're teaching like communication.
okay, yeah. So the organization. So I do two. So I do the presentation
Yeah.
coaching, and then I do organizational coaching and training. And for the organizational training and coaching, like self-awareness was a huge part of it. How are we showing up, and how can we have a little bit more power over the choices that we're making versus being in default mode? And how can we contribute to make it a more harmonious work environment? Because my why with that was like, if people go into the workplace, whether it's remotely or whether it's physically, and they're feeling a better sense of self and a stronger sense of contribution or service or connection with the people that they're working with, it'll just totally shift the world, because people will feel this powerful sense of agency versus feeling like they're just going to work and they're not feeling valued and they're not feeling seen and just going through the motions. And so it really is like, how can we show up at work and not be jerks to each other and hear each other and be in a space where you feel more human, and so you're not just looking at people in departmental titles or roles, but how are you all part of an organism that is pumping things out that is being of service to your community, your state, the world. So it's from that place. But I feel like you do that too, like the work you're doing. What's your why on that? I feel like it's similar.
I think it is similar. I started what I'm doing because in college, I'm not sure if I ever told you, in college, I did a public speaking competition. And that was the moment when I felt like I was in the zone because I practiced my butt off. It's more than my thesis and all that stuff. Um, and when I got on stage, I felt like because I practiced so much, the words were just flowing out and time slowed down. And I can look at people in the eyes and they were nodding, they were connecting. And so it was that moment that I wanted more of.
Mm.
So I feel like public speaking is kind of like teaching people how to cook. You know, when people cook with love, the food comes out better. So it's also teaching people how to like speak, but they enjoy the process of speaking, so that what the message that it comes out, it feels a lot more confident.
Yes.
It tastes better, but it's
Yes.
that process of when they're cooking or when we're coming up when we're speaking. It's the way I think that makes me feel that I want people to have more of that, those moments.
Mhm. I'm
Yeah.
hearing big time energy, like the energy that you put in when you're cooking with love, the energy that you're bringing into a space.
Yeah.
That's a similarity of what I was saying too about my why. And so that's why I felt like it was similar to yours
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
shifting that energy, how are we showing up? And it's not about always, like, it's not this pie in the sky Pollyanna positive thinking approach. Like it's not just that, but I call it grounded optimism. It's being realistic, but it's also being optimistic for what is in your control of what you can do, and when do you need to listen to yourself and maybe not do. And it's always a flow. It's a give and take, but it's so important to be able to show up in a way that you're more conscious of than just being at the mercy of living your life in this autopilot mode, you know?
Yeah. And I think those are the times when people need to be reminded of over and over again. Like
Yeah.
for you to give them a kick in the butt and say, hey, listen to yourself again. Because, I forget that. People forget that.
We all forget it, and it's kind of like, be careful what you're focusing on or teaching or training, because it's like we're the way I look at it is like you train and teach what you need to learn. So
I
I
agree.
had like a big thought of like self-awareness, and I was like, oh, self-awareness means perfection and you always have to be conscious and on. And I was like, and so like the first year I was like, oh man, I was exhausted. I was like, oh, I feel like not robotic, but just like almost like too perfect, like trying to, and I was like, that's so not who I am, and that's so not
Mhm.
how I want to be modeling this ingenuine kind of surface level of self-awareness. It's about realizing what triggers you. It's about realizing when you're getting pissed off and when you're getting sad, and realizing like it's human condition, man,
So, what would you suggest that someone can do, like very easily on a daily level for what you just said? Like, like be more self aware, how to show up.
um honestly, what I do in the morning, so at this moment, I'll give it may be a different advice after we're not social distancing, but at this moment, everybody's day to day has changed, and you don't have as much time to maybe do practices that you would usually do. Like, I would usually have more space to be alone, and the introvert in me loves that. I have like a pretty equal extrovert introvert, but the introvert in me, like, okay, I get to breathe, I get to have a little bit of space, and that's not happening as much at all, really. And so what I do is I'll sit in bed, and a lot of times my kids are in bed with me. They'll sleep with me at night, and so before I even wake up, I will just put my hand on my heart, and I'll just take 5 deep breaths, maybe 10 deep breaths, just to check in. And lately, there's been gratitude there, but there's definitely been fear. There's definitely been a little low energy, maybe a little depressed, during certain moments. There's been anxiety. Um, and I,
Mm.
when I'm really on, I, if I'm feeling that, I'm able to pay attention to it and then see how I can just shift it even a little bit so that I can lift my energy up a little bit more, so that I can start my day feeling just a little bit more empowered. I feel like so many of us right now are feeling this sense of powerlessness and helplessness, and it can be really toxic, and it can also be like quicksand. It's hard to get out of that. So I try the best I can to take like 5, 10 deep breaths. And it sounds so simple, but it's really not, because you have to remember to do it. And you have to really pay attention to what you're feeling. Like, it's not like I take that 5 deep breaths and then I'm like, oh, this is wonderful. Now I'm going to wake up. And sometimes it is like that. But recently, within the last like week or two, there's definitely been anxiety there. And there's definitely been a bit of maybe fear, or maybe a sense of just overwhelm. Like there's so much to juggle right now. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people might be going through the same stuff, as you're
Mhm.
saying that. But it's good to be aware
Yeah.
of how we're feeling. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Because
a good one.
like how quickly to be able to like, you're just, I mean, so many people have talked about how this is like Groundhog Day, like same thing over and over again, and that means that you're at the mercy of that autopilot versus taking a little bit like, okay, you had the reins for a little bit, but I'm going to just ease them back. You don't have to rip them out, but like just take them back. And then you're the one pulling, you're the one pumping the brakes a little bit. And it really is about, and it's so much easier to stay busy and rush through and not feel what you're feeling because a lot of times we don't want to feel what we're feeling, especially if it's not something that's quote unquote good. But I just sense, again, going back to what we were talking about, like knowing your why and being of service, I look at it like I'm leading by example. My kids are with me so often that if I'm in this frantic mode, it's that's what they're going to remember. And one thing that I recently heard, which I'm really excited about. So tomorrow night, this is going to air. Our conversation is going to air after it. But tomorrow night there is a webinar with the organization Girls Leadership. One of their co-founders, Rachel Simmons, is going to be speaking. And one of the lines they had in the blurb about what the webinar is about is that the one thing so it's about parenting during COVID. And one thing that they said that your kids are going to remember about COVID, like the one main thing they'll remember is how they felt during
Oh,
COVID.
that's good. That's
And I
good.
was like, I just got the chills again. Like, I was just like, wait a second. Yes, your kids, but also your organization, like your team, it goes beyond that. Like when you're in the space with people, you are a contributor to how people are feeling. And so we are responsible for how we show up and how we feel for sure. But if you're leading a group, there is that sense of responsibility of creating, and they say that the energy trickles down. So it is up to us as leaders to be able to check in, take the 5 deep breaths, or if that's not your thing, some sort of practice that allows you to check in with yourself, see how you're feeling, being honest about how you're feeling, so that you can show up in more of a trusting and honest way for yourself, for other people that you come into contact with, because that's
There's one
huge,
last thing.
right?
With
Yeah.
empathy, it's exactly going back to what you were saying. It's, if we're parents, it's how do our kids feel during all of this time? If we're in the team and organization, how are the leaders treating us during this time? How are we treating each other? And we're human beings that feel first of all before all the logistical things come about. So empathy is one of the most important things that we lose control of when there's a disaster. We don't know. We're just reacting to our feelings instead of honing it and knowing how it makes us feel and make other people feel. So we might be lashing out if we did not even want to lash out in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, coming back full circle, slowing it down, right? Instead of reacting, responding. And also, just to close in on that idea of paying attention to the feeling. So the empathy is focus on the emotion. You don't have kids. If you're my boss, Kit, and I'm overwhelmed and I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, I have so much on my plate right now, and you're checking in with me because I'm your direct report. It doesn't matter if you can't relate to having kids. You understand what it feels like to be overwhelmed. There's probably a ton of different times in your life when you were overwhelmed. We may handle it differently, but you can empathize by understanding that you know what that emotion is.
Yeah. Yeah. One last thing I want to say to that with
Yeah.
empathy. There's a line: situation, behavior, feeling, action. It's usually because of a situation that we're in that makes us act a certain way. Therefore, we will feel a certain way. You can say that back and forth.
Yeah.
Situation, we either feel something and then we act, or because we're acting and then we're feeling. But it's not with the feeling. It's take a look at what actions are we doing or not doing. The situation around us. Sometimes I know some people are like, yeah, feelings. Yeah, we're all humans. We have feelings, but take a look at the situation that we're in and also the behaviors that you're doing or not doing. Because let's say you want to go to bed at 10 o'clock every night, but you're not going to bed at 10 o'clock every night. Therefore, you'll start feeling differently because it's still working. Either the feeling is good or not good. It's still different. So paying attention to what's around us too.
Yes, paying attention. If anyone can take anything from this conversation, pay attention. And it might be a crummy feeling. Let it come out somehow. Even if you have to scream in a pillow, take a bat, like don't let the kids see it, but like take a bat to a couple pillows if you're angry, scream in a pillow, cry, like just get it out in some way and pay attention to how you're feeling. Absolutely. Kit, thank you so much. If when people want to hear more, learn more all about Boston Speaks, where can they go to find that?
Yeah, thank you, Krista. You can go to bostonspeaks.com or let's connect on LinkedIn.
You're killing it on LinkedIn, by the way. Absolutely
You
killing
got to
it.
be killing it.
I love it. All right, Kit, we'll speak soon for sure.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.